All right, so we're continuing our study here in the book of John, and handed out a design of the layout of the temple. This will give us a little bit of better understanding where some of the stuff took place in the temple. And we're in chapter 8, and we're going to read our text today, starting at verse 12 of chapter 8. And it says, Then Jesus spake again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but have the light of life. The Pharisees therefore said unto him, Thou bearest record of thyself, if thy record is not true. Jesus answered and said unto them, Though I bear record of myself, yet my record is true. For I know whence I came and whither I go, but ye cannot tell whence I come and whither I go. Ye judge after the flesh. I judge no man. And yet, if I judge, my judgment is true. For I am not alone, but I and the Father that sent me. It is also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I am one that beareth witness of myself, and the Father that sent me beareth witness of me. Then they said unto him, Where is thy Father? Jesus answered, Ye neither know me nor my Father. If ye had known me, ye would have known also my Father also. These words Jesus spake in the treasury as he taught in the temple, and no man laid hands on him, for his hour was not yet come. Okay, so as we start this lesson here, we are continuing at the Feast of the Tabernacle. It's continued on. These events in chapter 8 happened before the last day of the feast, as recorded in 737. Okay, so, and after more study, apparently I found out something else about the pouring of water from the previous study. It wasn't done on just the last day. It was done every day during the Feast of Tabernacles as a celebration for the trip through the wilderness, as the 40 years that the Israelis were being led out of the wilderness from Egypt, God supplying the water for them, and that was part of the celebration of the Feast of Tabernacles, that they would celebrate a ritual of pouring water out, showing the overabundance of water that God supplied them with, and everything like that. So I thought it was just one, but after studying more, so this is why we study. This is why we always find new things in the Scripture. It's a living Bible. It's a living Word of God, and we're always learning. So during the feast, we see on that event, we see that Jesus took he took that full advantage of that opportunity to witness of who he was. Okay, and during the feast, Jesus taking full advantage of the event of the last day of the Feast of the Tabernacles to center the attention on him, the living water that refreshes our soul forever. And now this week we're going to see some similarities of the events during the Feast of Tabernacles. And one of those events is that Jesus is the light of the world. So we can see here, let's look at verse 12 here and see what that says again. It says, And then spake Jesus again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. Now, where was this event at? Okay, well, if we go down here to verse 20, we can see where it was at. He spoke in the treasury as he taught in the temple, and no man laid hands on him, for his hour had not yet come. So we can see it was in the treasury. All right. Now, the treasury, if you look on here, was located in the women's court. Okay, so if you look here at the very bottom, you see the big cross area. That is where the treasury was in that area there. What they would have is they have set up trumpets, like a trumpet with a funnel going down to a box. Okay, so they would put money into those trumpets, and it would slide down into the box, and that's how they collected. It's very interesting that they would do that. Now, one of the things that we remember that Jesus talked about how the Pharisees liked to be seen giving those things, and the widow with this mite gave her last thing. He said she gave more than all the others. You know, it was interesting because these trumpets were probably made out of metal. So the Pharisees would gather up their coins and then they would drop them in and make a big show, and it would make all the noise of that trump falling down into that trumpet and clanging and banging and making a big production about how much they give. So everybody's like, ooh, he's giving a lot. Where the poor widow just gave her 2 mites. That's all she had. And, you know, Jesus said she gave more because she gave everything she had. And they just made like I said, just made the big show. But anyways, so you have these collection receptacles, I guess is what you could call it. But there was 13 different collection boxes in this area, okay? Now, if you look at this layout, they had, here down at the bottom, you had the entrances on each side, and you also had the front entrance. So this is a high traffic area, and that's what's interesting about this. There was, like I said, there's 13 different collections. Now, 1 and 2 of the number 1 and number 2 of those boxes that were set out there for collection was for the temple tax, and every Jew had to pay the temple tax. That was a standard thing that they all had to do. 3 and 4 was for the purchase of doves for the sacrifices of women that had been pregnant. Thought that was very interesting. So if a woman had gotten pregnant, she would have to offer 2 doves, and then they would collect money for that to pay for those doves in boxes 3 and 4. Okay, number 5 was the purchasing of wood for the altars. Okay, so there was they had to buy wood for the altars to burn the sacrifices. Number 6 was for the collection of incense. Okay. Number 7 was the upkeep of the golden vessels, or the ability to purchase new ones for the temple. And then 8 through 13 were general funds. So anything else that the temple needed would go into the general funds. But these were located mainly right out there in the women's court at various places. More than likely, they would have the temple tax at the side gates, because it would be the first thing that people would see. They'd have to come in and pay their tax. So the Treasury was a high traffic area. The women's court was the meeting place where everyone was allowed in except the Gentiles. Okay, so none of us were allowed to be in that area unless we were proselytes and we were converting over to Judaism. Okay, the Jews were very strict on this. Now, if you look at the outer light gray area, this is as far as the Gentiles were allowed to go. It was just around that perimeter. They were not allowed to go inside, like I said, unless they were a proselyte converting over into Judaism. Now, if you look at the layout again, you'll see that half at Nicanor's gate, and that's a staircase around at the bottom of it, and that goes up into the next section. Now, let's see, unless they were proselytes converting Jews, and then only then, if they were men, could they go past the half-circle staircase, but no further than the court of the Israelis. Okay, so you see, as they pass through the gate, there's the court of the Israelis. That's as far as they were allowed to go, unless they were a priest. Now, if they were a priest, they could continue to go to the priest court, so they could go farther in. And only a select of them could go to the porch and to the sanctuary. Okay, remember Zacharias? That was what he was allowed. He was one of them that was allowed to have the service. He was allowed to go a little bit further in. And then only the high priest could go into the behind the veil of the holiest of holies, and we can see that area there. So we can see the sanctuary and the porch area was where John the Baptist's father was allowed to go, but he was not allowed to go to the holiest of holies. He was not the high priest. Okay, so where was this at? This event that happened we just read? It was down at the women's court area. That's where the treasury area was. And it was also the biggest and most populated area. So Jesus has taken the perfect opportunity here to do this. And we'll get to that in a minute. Verse 12, once again, it says, and Jesus said unto them, I am the light of the world. Okay, notice he said the in that. Not one of many, like a rabbi or a teacher would normally say, I am one of many lights to help you, guide you to God. Jesus said he was the light. Okay, I think that's interesting. His claim here is that of a divine nature. That's the thing that's important here. He has said that he is the one that they've been looking for. The ultimate statement made by the ultimate Savior, the only one that can save them. He even adds to this statement the I am. The I am to this statement makes himself equal to God. So that's what's great about this. No one in all of history could ever make this statement and be truthful. Jesus is the only one that could ever make that statement. And for him to have made this statement would continue the hatred of the religious leaders, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. It would continue their hatred toward him, and it would also continue to antagonize them. This is part of the reasons why he said it, where he said it, when he said it. Now, 6 months later, we're going to see the events unfold because of some of this stuff here that he did. But until then, they would put him on the cross in God's perfect timing. That's the important part. God's timing, not their timing. They wanted to get rid of him as quick as they could. It took 6 months from this point to get rid of him. But they didn't really get rid of him. He laid his life down for us. So the Pharisees knew exactly what he was saying when he made this statement, I am the light. They knew some of the Old Testament prophecies. So we're going to look at some of these. Let's go over to Isaiah. We find a lot of good stuff in Isaiah about the forthcoming Messiah. We're going to go to Isaiah 42. And we're going to read verses 1, and then we're going to skip some, and then we're going to read some more. Isaiah 42:1 says, My servant whom I uphold, mine elect, in whom my soul delighteth, I have put my spirit upon him, and he shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. Now let's go down to verse 5 through 7 here. Thus saith God the Lord, that he that created the heavens and stretched them out, and he has spread forth the earth, and that which cometh out of it, he that giveth breath unto the people upon it, and spirit to them that walketh therein. I, the Lord, have called thee in righteousness, and will hold thine hand, and will keep thee, and give thee for a covenant of the people, for a what? Light of the Gentiles. Okay, to open the blind eyes, to bring out the prisoners from the prison, and to them that sit in darkness out of the prison house. Okay, notice there's light and dark in those verses there. A light to the Gentiles. That's us. That's what he has done for us. He's given us that light, and he has brought us out of the darkness of prison. Okay, what prison are we talking about? The prison of sin. Okay, so he's bringing us out of that. Now let's turn over to Isaiah 49. Let's look at that one. Isaiah 49. 49 verses 5 and 6 here. And now saith the Lord that formed me from the womb to be his servant, to bring Jacob again to him. Though Israel be not gathered, yet I shall be glorious in the eyes of the Lord, and my God and my strength. And he said, It is a light thing that thou shouldest be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob, and to restore and to preserve of Israel. I will also give thee for a light to the Gentiles, that thou mayest be my salvation unto the end of the earth. Once again, we see light to the Gentiles. So that's what he is to us. He's our light. He's our Savior. Now, let's turn over to Malachi. Let's see one more here. Okay, Malachi 4 and verse 2. Malachi 4:2 says, But unto you that fear my name shall the Son of Righteousness rise with healing in his wings, and ye shall go forth and grow up as calves of the stall. Okay, now look at that word, Son of Righteousness. S-U-N, but it's capitalized. It's capitalized for a reason, isn't it? All right. I like this because it compares him to the Son of Righteousness, or sunbeams, or rays of light. Okay, so we can see the double meaning in this and what he does to our soul. He enlightens our soul, and it's capitalized. I like that because that brings it out. There's a name there, the Son of Righteousness, S-U-N, and he's also the Son, S-O-N, of righteousness. And we can look at this too in another way. To those that despise him, they will burn with his heat. But those who like him, he will give comfort and warmth. And we can see that double and healing in all that. You notice how much better a person's attitude when it's sunny out. Like today, it's been gloomy for the past couple of 4 days here, and yesterday it was just so windy. But like today, the sun's out, it's calm outside. What's everybody's spirit like? It's just a lot better attitude than it is when it's doom and gloom outside. So, I find that interesting how it's compared to the sun of the sky. Now, the statement here also says the same thing we started this whole gospel. Let's turn over to John 1, and we're going to see some things here. John 1, verses 4 and 5, and cover this again. Verse 4 and 5 of chapter 1 of John, it says, In him was life, and life was the light of men, and the light shineth in darkness, and the darkness comprehended it not. Okay? Light dispels darkness. Darkness of what? The darkness of false teaching, the darkness of ignorance, the darkness of sorrow, the darkness of impurity. The Pharisees knew exactly what Jesus was saying when he made this statement. He was claiming to be God. He was claiming to be the Messiah. So why did he do this? All right. Look at the last day. Okay, the last day we talked about last time we got together, or a couple times we got together on this, and it says the water pouring. Okay, it was a ritual. Now, similar to this event of the water pouring was the Festival of Lights, not Hanukkah, but the Feast of the Tabernacles. In the women's court, what they would do is they would take menorahs. Now, a menorah is a lampstand that had 7 branches coming up off of it. A main branch in the middle, and you've probably seen these a lot. If you go to the Jewish cemetery, they're all over the cemetery on the headstones. But it's a 6 or 3 on this side, 3 on this side, and 1 in the middle, and they would hold lamps. They would light them up, and they would have these all through the women's court. So if you look at that area and how big that is, they would have so many of them in there that the light could be seen from a long ways away. Now you got to think about this. If it would light up so bright, they didn't have electric. They did not have electric back then. So it would light up the sky at people coming in, and they would see this light. So they would do this, and it was called the illumination of the temple. That's what it was called. These would burn all night, and this was to reflect on something that happened in Exodus. So let's turn to Exodus and see what that event was. Exodus 13. Exodus 13 and verses 21 and 22. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of a cloud to lead them the way, and by night in a pillar of fire to give them what? To give them light, and to go by day and night. He took not away the pillar of the cloud by day, nor the pillar of fire by night from before the people. So whenever the cloud of the cloud would move in the daytime, that's when they would move. If it was stationary, they would stay there. Same thing with the pillar. At nighttime, it would be the pillar of fire, and they would move with that. Okay, so this is why they did this at the Feast of Tabernacles, to reflect back and have a ritual based on what happened in the Old Testament there, as recorded on the journey out of Egypt. So the timing of this is perfect. What Jesus did, he timed this to represent, hey, I am, Jesus is saying this, the light of the world. I was the one back then. I still am. You just need to understand this. Now, you can only imagine the furiousness of these Pharisees when he said this, because he's claiming that claim. Follow Jesus as the Jews followed the pillar of flame to the promised land. Now, we can see Jesus stand there and proclaim that he is the light of the world. He is the light that leads us to the heavenly kingdom. The way God led the Israelis through the wilderness all those 40 years, that's what Jesus is doing in our lives. He's leading us to the heavenly kingdom. He leads us to salvation. He leads us to everlasting life. Now, follow Jesus as the Jews followed the pillar of flame to the promised land. Let's look at verse 13, back in John now. We'll go back, John chapter 8, verse 13. Okay. The Pharisees therefore said unto him, Thou bearest record of thyself, thy record is not true. The antagonizing of the religious leaders is what he did. He antagonized them. So what do? They pull out the law to try to say that he is a liar. Okay? They would have been true had he been fully man and not also fully God. He was fully God. God doesn't lie. Therefore, he was exempt from the law because he created the law. Now, he doesn't lie like mankind can lie on things, okay? Mankind has that fault. Being fully God and fully man, he does not have that fault. So he did not lie. The law didn't apply to him because he was fully God while he was here on earth, and God doesn't lie. But they didn't want to believe the truth. They would rather believe the lies of the devil, who had blinded their eyes and made them willfully ignorant. That was one of the things that they were doing. They were willfully ignorant. They were not willing. Why is that? Why were they not willing? because they were not a chosen vessel of honor. They were a chosen vessel of God for dishonor. Okay? God used them the same way he used Pharaoh. They had the mindset like Cain and the mindset like Esau. Okay? God chose them to be a vessel of dishonor. Let's look at verse 14. Jesus answered and said unto them, Though I bear record of myself, yet my record is true, for I know whence I came and whither I go. But you cannot tell whether I come or whither I go. They had the opportunity, the Pharisees had the opportunity to research where Jesus was born, where he had been, and all this. Temple records recorded him being born in Bethlehem. They didn't want to take the time, so they were being willfully ignorant of the truth. They didn't want to research anything. He was also claiming in this that he is eternal. Okay? Let's look at John 1:14. Familiar verse. If it's not, you should read it more. All right, John 1:14. And the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Okay. Let's turn over to John 17. John 17, verse 5. And now, O Father, glorify me with thine own self, with the glory which I had with thee before the world was. Okay? So he was eternal. He was eternal. Now let's go back to 7:29. '28 and 29. Jesus cried in the temple, he taught, Ye both know me, and ye know whence I am, and I am come not of myself, but he that sent me is true, whom ye do not know. But I know him, for I am from him, and he hath sent me. Okay? So we can see Jesus' claim to be true all through the scriptures. They knew, the Pharisees knew, that they were willfully ignorant and judged him solely on his appearance. Okay, let's go to back to chapter 8 and verse 15. Ye judge after the flesh, I judge no man. He has the right to judge because his judgment is not superficial. They judged on appearance and the way people, talk, their attitude, their looks, everything but the truth. Verse 16. Yet if I judge, my judgment is true, for I am not alone, but I and the Father that sent me. And let's go on to 17 and 18 here. It is also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I am one that bears witness of myself, and the Father that sent me bear witness of me. So he took the law and threw it right back in their face. He said his witness and the miracles that he did proved that the Father was with him. Okay, let's go back to John 3:2 here. We're going to look at something here. John 3:2. One of their own knew this. One of their own recognized who he was, Nicodemus. 3:2 says, The same came to Jesus by night and said unto him, Rabbi, we know that thou art a teacher come from God. We know, look at that, we know that thou art a teacher come from God. Okay? One of their own knew this. They surely have talked to Nicodemus by now about him. Okay? So they knew. They just did not want to believe that Jesus is who he was. Now, we can also, if we look at chapter 7, we can see that they've already judged Nicodemus. Let's look at chapter 7 and verse 50 and 52. Nicodemus saith unto them, He that came to Jesus by night, being one of them, doth our law judge any man before it hear him and know what he doeth? And they answered and said unto him, Art thou also of Galilee? Search and look, for out of Galilee ariseth no prophet. Okay, so you can see in that verse there, they've already started to turn on Nicodemus. They didn't like what he had to say because he was defending Jesus. You can see the scorn in that. Let's look at verse 19 of chapter 8 there. It says, Then they said unto him, Where is thy Father? Jesus answered, Ye neither know me nor my Father. If ye had known me, ye should have known my Father also. All right? Can you see the scorn in that statement? Where is thy Father? Okay? They didn't so it was basically a slur against him. Possibly for two reasons. One, that possibly Joseph had already passed away. That was his earthly father, okay? And two, possibly him being in their minds, an illegitimate child, okay? And all the shame that went along with that, okay? We can see him, though, with all that going on, him still speaking heavenly, isn't he? He's still speaking heavenly, and they turn around and they speak earthly. So let's look at verse 20 here. These words Jesus spake in the treasury. Okay, so we've determined where the treasury's at. That's in the women's court. Okay, and no man laid hands on him, for his hour was not yet come. Now, it was just not his time. 6 months from now is when God had time for him to die on the cross. And it was going to be that way. They had already planned this when he came to earth. He knew his time was not yet at hand, but he knew how to get them to hate him. All he had to do is speak the truth. They didn't want to hear that. Now, verse 21 says, I'm going to go here too. It says, And then Jesus said unto them, I go my way, and ye shall seek me, and ye shall die in your sins. Whither I go, ye cannot come. Okay, like I said, that was going to be about 6 months from now. Jesus' judgment was just. He who believes not is condemned already. He who believes is not condemned. In 6 months, he's going to die on the cross. They will be looking for their Messiah, and they shall not find him, and they are going to die in their sins. He judged them right here. He judged them what's going to happen to them. He knew what was going to happen to them. He's all seeing. He knows. And they will not enter heaven where Jesus is. So the thing of it is today that we can learn from this, don't be like the Pharisees. Don't be willfully ignorant. Do your research. Find the truth. And join all of us that believe in heaven where Jesus is. May God bless you all this morning.